everyone. My name is Chan, and today we're going to talk about SharePoint upgrade. So that's just me. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can get there's my email address up there. Any part of this talk, whatever we discussed today about upgrade, just send me an email, and I'm happy to talk more about it. So I work for a company called KnowledgeQ, and we do SharePoint stuff. That's about what we do. So today we're going to talk about, obviously, upgrade. So just a show of hand, who's on SharePoint 2003? A few, okay. Who has kind of started running pre-scan on 2003, getting an idea of what you guys would need to move into 2007? No, not at all? 2007, who's on Service Pack 2 on 2007? Okay, that's a good few of you. That's where I should stick to. So I'll show you some ways of getting 2003 data ready for getting into 2007 and then into 2010. You have to get it to 2007 to get to 2010, or you can use a third-party migration tool to get the content out of it, right? So what I'm going to talk about is obviously getting ready, Service Pack 2 updates and the cumulative updates, why they're important, and do a bit of testing on your current infrastructure and getting basically your platform ready to be able to upgrade, right? And then I'm going to go through a few demos around upgrade planning task and actually do an upgrade as well. Demo God's willing. So the key thing around upgrade is basically you have to go through quite a few scenarios within your environments contextually to what you're doing. Say, how is your current environment performing, right? So learn about what your environment is. Learn about how many servers you currently have got, what are you going to do in the future, and then prepare your services. So for example, if you're in server 2003, you actually need to go to 2008, 64-bit, to be able to upgrade to 2010, right? So this is the kind of the cycle that you need to go through about understanding where you are today, what do I need to do, test, quite important thing, and then try and implement and then validate your implementation. So that's kind of like a really key learning cycle that you'll need to go within your project, within your organization in order to deploy 2010. So the upgrade paths, basically if you're on WSSv2 or SharePoint Portal Server 2003, you need to go to 2007. So that's the kind of the supported upgrade path. There is a 2007 virtual machine available that you can actually download from the Upgrade Center with some pre-built scripts for 2003 Portal Server and WSSv2, which you can actually run through and get your data ready to be upgraded to 2010, right? I'll put the link up on my blog. Who's using Microsoft Content Management Server 2002, 2001, MCMS? Yeah. So going from MCMS, you can go to 2007 and then into 2010. I've actually got a blog article of how to move MCMS content into 2007 and then into 2010, which I'll give the link about. And again, Project Server 2003, it's the same cycle, right? There's a few things that's not there, like if you're using Performance Point services, there are specific things you need to do because Performance Point is now part of the SharePoint 2010 stack, right? So that's kind of like the upgrade paths. So again, requirements-wise, what do you need? So for SharePoint 2010, you need 64-bit hardware, software, and so forth, right? So when you're looking at your upgrade, think about how's your SQL Server environment. So because SQL is always going to be one of the key things around SharePoint deployments. If you're in 2005, it's supported with Service Pack 3 plus the latest cumulative updates. But if you're in 2008, maybe you should think about going to R2 because 2008, SQL 2008 R2 is kind of the preferred choice. And if you're going to do BI stuff and Power Pivot and so forth, you need 2008 R2 for some of that stuff, right? So here's another thing you need to think about. Are you moving things? Maybe you got old hardware that you actually decommission and then move your SharePoint deployments into 64-bit environment, or are you just going to migrating 32-bit? You're just basically migrating content Is that what you want to do? Or you're going to upgrade your environment as it is into 2010. So start in your planning cycle. These are the kind of things you might need to come across. So if you've got a 2003 Windows environment, then you need to actually go and deploy Server 2008. So you need to kind of start planning about those, start thinking about those things to plan. So prepping the servers, one of the key things you need to think about is so basically your software side of things. What software do I need? Again, think about the client requirements because SharePoint 2010 supports level 5 browsers or IE7 and above. So if you've got IE6 in your environment, you might not now need to deploy IE8, Internet Explorer 8 to your organization, or 9 when it comes out. So start thinking about those kind of things as well. So in order for some of the functionality to work, you need IE8, right? And disk space, that's another key thing. It's actually relative to how big your content databases are and how you're going to move things across different environments and how you're going to get your backup set up so you can restore them to new farms and so on and so forth, right? Don't underestimate that there's a whole lot of data requirements around when you're moving across to a new deployment. So it's kind of like a iteration of what I talked about. So where are you today? Identify your environment. Have you got documentation of how your solutions have been deployed? Have you got custom solutions? Go through and do some checks around your environment. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And also maybe it's a good time to start thinking about the future. So with 2010, you get a whole lot of more services, so which was essentially about 8 services in 2007. It's now about 16 services with service application associated with those services that you need to plan for. So if your organization is going to do documents and records management, it's now the time to think about how you do your management of your taxonomy and so forth. So there's a managed metadata hub and how those metadata and so forth collected and also stored in SQL and so forth. So there's a whole lot of things that you need to kind of start thinking about if you are thinking about 2010, right? So I'm going to go into a demo straight away. So who's done SharePoint 2007 audits apart from you, Wayne? So what do I mean by an audit? Basically what I mean by an audit is, say, for example, you got into a situation where somebody else has done a SharePoint deployment and you are the SharePoint administrator. You would have been the Exchange or SQL admin yesterday, and then suddenly your boss comes and says, you're the SharePoint admin, look after this thing, right? You have no idea what's been deployed, right? So how do you figure out, I don't know what a web application is, what is this content database thing, why are there GUIDs in the SQL databases and what have you? How do you find out? So there's easy things to do. If you're a newbie, the best thing is walk around central administration. I'll walk you through, I mean, you can gather quite a lot of data just by going to central admin. Second thing, the SharePoint admin toolkit, SPDAG, is quite useful for diagnostics. It's kind of a bit of an advanced tool. It does a whole lot of data collection, and also you can do performance monitoring. Microsoft Premier Support use that quite a lot to diagnose and give you a report on how your SharePoint environment is working. I suppose my favorites are always going to be STS ADM and PowerShell. Those two tools, so STS ADM is a command line tool that gets deployed into the 2L Hive, the bin directory where you can actually run commands against SharePoint environments to get a whole lot of data back, right? And then there are third-party tools available on Codeplex. SharePoint Manager is quite a good tool, but you can do quite a bit of damage if you don't know how to use that tool as well. So be very careful when you get third-party tools out of Codeplex, where that kind of support boundary lies and what you can do. Just make sure you've got a kind of a SharePoint test environment where you can test these things out and what have you, right? The other one I kind of missed was the pre-upgrade check, which is kind of like obvious, which you can do today if you got Service Pack 2. It has been enhanced as of 2009 October with some really good parameters like the enum all webs command. It's quite handy to have to do when you want to do diagnostics, right? And I think I'm going to the demo of an upgrade. So what I have here is a SharePoint 2007 environment, and I've got, so this is central administration if you haven't seen central admin before. So this is where yourself as a SharePoint administrator will do a lot of the admin functions, right? This PowerShell STS-ADM. So STS-ADM is deprecated now, but there are matching commands in STS-ADM which are kind of available in PowerShell, but will be made available as time goes by, right? But PowerShell is pretty much your Swiss Army knife for 2010 administration. There are certain things in the 2010 GUI that are not, you cannot do certain configurations, you have to actually use PowerShell. So it's the time, now's the time to actually go out, get a PowerShell book and start learning about PowerShell. So what I'm looking at now here in my environment is a web application called Projects07, and I've got 3 content databases associated with it. Can you tell me how many, so out of these 3 content databases, what is the default site level of content databases? When you create a content database, so when you create a web application, what happens? Yeah, so when you create a web application, so in SharePoint world, when you create a web application, you create a database, and then you associate the database with the process account, which is the account that it goes and talks to the database, and that's where the databases live. So a single web application can have multiple databases, right? So there are some guidelines around how much data a database should hold. So there are some soft limits and hard limits and so forth. So the general guideline is don't let your databases grow beyond 100 gig, right? So what I've got here is 3 databases. I've got one called SP Content Upgrade. So what I want to do now is I'm going to run let me go and see. First I'm going to do is basically go and see how many websites are there in my database, right? So grab that pre-made command there and go to my, so there you go. So all I'm doing is I'm just going to see so I can, visually I can see there's one site in that, right? But I want to see through that by just typing that command STS-ADM -o enum sites, passing the URL, and passing the database name against a specific database, how many sites are there, right? So I can run that. It's going to do and run it, hopefully. So what it's going to do is go and talk to SQL. So if you actually run a SQL trace, you can see what's actually happening in the back end or what have you. So it's come back and said, okay, there's a site there, and the owner is the farm account, and the secondary owner is the setup account, and there's the database name, and there's the storage warning and the storage max, but it's actually got quite a lot of content, right? So it's about 7 gigs worth, right? So have you, in your environments, how many of you have actually set quota templates onto your sites? Yeah? Where do you set the quota templates? At site collection level, right? Right? So, and how do you see how much of data your site's taken up? So if you go to, say, this site, which is Projects07, by the way, I'm actually using some actual real-world data from a customer of mine. Thanks for letting me use it if the customer is in the room. But yeah, so let's go there. So one of the key points that I'm trying to make here is that a lot of people kind of talk about it, but they miss out on where to actually set it properly, right? There's 2 places to set it. So the first place to set it, obviously, is in Central Admin. Actually, I'll show you another neat little trick. Sorry, this is always the case with SharePoint. It takes a wee bit of time to load up. So yeah, let's go into application management and quota templates, right? So I've got a quota template called Steam Site Quota, which I've said so that's where you create the quota template, right? So I can create a new one. There's a couple of ones that come by default, but you should always create a new one. So based on your kind of your initial requirements that you gather around how many users are going to be using it, how many documents are going to be uploaded to your site and what have you, you can set those templates right here, right? So I've set this to be 2 gig and 1.8 as the warning limit. So is this all you have to do? No, right? So to be able for this to actually work, you got to go to application management and site collection quotas and locks, right? And then set that limit there, right? And this is also where you can actually block certain site collection from being any content being added to it, right? This hasn't changed much in 2010, so I'm showing this stuff here today, which is quite applicable to 2010 as well, right? So once you set it there, what you can do is if you go to site actions, modify all site settings, and I'm going to point out to something else as well. How many of you, when you log on to your SharePoint server, right in the corner of the top there, you see system account? Yeah? So there's two things you need to know about when you install SharePoint. You only need 2 accounts to install SharePoint right at the beginning, right? One is the farm service account. One is the setup account. So what rights does the farm service account need? It just needs to be a domain account, but all it needs is the domain admin rights, right? Domain basically is a domain account, and it doesn't need anything else, right? The setup account has to be the local admin on the server that you start installing on, right? So I see a lot of the time people doing that. I mean, on a local server, that's fine if you are doing deving, but in the production environment, it's a bit of a no-no, right? That account is only used to talk to the database, and that's for a reason, right? And that actually corresponds to the central admin application pool account, right? So where are we going? So site settings, and you get this little link there called storage space allocation. So here's the thing. Go to your SharePoint server when you go back to your workplace and see if you can see that link. If you can't see that link, you won't actually set your site quota, right? So here's another way of actually finding out where your site collection is actually consuming a lot of space in your area, right? So I can go in here and see, okay, how much of growth have I got? Actually, I don't have any space remaining because it's got 8 gig, right? So you can see documents and also see how much recycle bin space is going to be taking, right? So here's another kind of a hint where you can actually go and see how your SharePoint farm is, right? Okay, let me just move away from this one. So we've done the, so I can only see one site, so I need to see, okay, obviously there must be some more things in there because it can't be just one site. So a site and then there's also subsites, right? So to find out how many subsites you got, you can run the stsadm -o enum subwebs command, which basically gives you all the subsites, right? So another thing you can do is when you run this command, you can pump it out to a text file and then use it for further analysis, right? So let that run. So the next one is the pre-upgrade check command, right? So this is the one that you have to absolutely run if you are doing an upgrade, right? You can run this as many times as you want, and you will be, because this is where you will see if is your environment ready for an upgrade, right? So there you go. So I'll run that command, and I can see that there's a whole bunch of project sites, sites below that top level URL, right? So I've only run that against that particular single database, right? Because I'm only interested in that database, right? So the next one I'm going to do is run the pre-upgrade check command, right? This is the one. If you're on Service Pack 2, run this because you'll get a whole lot of information about your environment, right? This is a really key one. So while it runs, I'm just going to switch back into my desktop and show you a pre-made one. So, because I need to kind of follow through with my demos quite a bit. So here's one that's been run previously, and you can see that you get a big warning sign there saying there's some potential upgrade blocking issues, right? And then you see usually you'd say anything that has a reference to missing. So there's a GUID, unknown reference, number 2, status equals missing, right? So what you want to go and find out is, okay, these are references to maybe features or solutions that's been deployed, and that is now referenced in many sites, but it can't find it. So bear in mind there are some false positives in these areas where you can actually you have to actually manually go through and clean up some of these things, right? Because there are stubs left behind because you may have deployed a site template and then removed the site template and then deleted it, but these little web path things or these GUIDs get left behind, right? In some cases, you can still run upgrade and get it working, but you have to manually go through and clean it, right? But what I'm going to show you is if you want to actually clean it up, how you can do that, right? So also you'd see that there's 2 templates missing. So template ID is 75818, 75820. So each of the SharePoint templates that are deployed into the 12 Hive has an ID. And that's quite well documented on TechNet and also on some blogs. You can go and find them. So these 2 in particular are the part of the Fabulous 40 templates, right? So at some point in time, there has been these 2 templates been deployed, and there's a couple of sites that's using those 2 templates. But on this particular instance of the server, it's not referenced, right? That's why those errors are coming. So now I can go back into, there you go, just got the same error. So what you can do to get rid of these errors is actually, there's a handy little utility called WSS Analyze Features, right? So this is a tool that was written quite some time ago by a premier field engineer called Stefan Gosner, who used to work in the MCMS team. And still, this tool is quite handy if you want to do cleanup jobs, right? So what I've done is basically run this, and then I can just run that command. Actually, there's some parameters that I need to put in. So what I want to see is actually see what are the features that is causing problems. Oh, sorry. Actually had a command. There you go. That's the one I want. So I'm just going to run that, and it's actually going to pump out a text file. So I'll show you the text file that it generates. So it will create this little text file called feature problems, right? And then also give you another one. So what I found out through going through that is that it goes and says, okay, here's the site and here's the reference. So that's quite handy, right? Now I can find out which site it is and also find out where it's been referenced, right? So now I can go through and then clean those things quite respectfully and say, okay, what's in this site? Go and talk to the business owner and say, hey, we've got this thing. It's holding up our upgrade. Could we just manually transfer the contents, right? So there's a few things you can do with that kind of information, right? And then also say it's not installed and so on and so forth, right? And if you browse to the site, in reality, you can actually see the content and what have you. It's just these stubs this is kind of like cleaning up your environment, more or less, to get rid of unwanted stuff, right? So how you can now clean that up is basically go to, so that's given that's thing. So I've actually pre-created this one called remove features batch. So there's another command called remove WSS remove features from site, right? What it does is, so if I open that file, I basically I've taken all the feature IDs, right? And then said, yeah, I want to force remove these things because the business owner said, yeah, I don't really know what these are, I don't care, right? So let's run that little bat file. While it's running, so you can see now there are these things missing here. So there's 2, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9. Sorry, 7, yeah, 9. And also says there's these are referenced but are not installed on the server, right? And there's a bunch of actual config files missing there as well. But apart from that, this should be an okay to upgrade kind of scenario, right? Cool. So that's going through and doing that. So let me come back to the slide deck because I got a few things to follow. So in terms of doing an audit, the key one you need to use is the STS-ADM pre-upgrade check, right? Because that gives you quite a bit of detail. And then after that, you can use the enum all webs command. So what I've done again here is I've used the enum all webs command, right? So if you run the STS-ADM enum all webs command, it outputs a XML file. I can pump it out into XML. Then I can import into Excel. Then I actually start doing some analysis, right? So the ones that I want to look out for is that, okay, what is this insight map? So this is where anybody of you go to the Troy Kirkland session around site orphans, how site orphans are getting created? So if you see in your pre-upgrade check report there is a site orphan, that means there's been a situation where a site's been created but a site collection hasn't been created and another database might have been attached. So there are situations where there are blank entries in your content database, right? So what you can say is go through by going through it and see, okay, all this is good. I just want to see all the missing ones, right? So I just want to see, sorry, that's the one that I want to filter on. So I'm fine with the missing, the installed ones. I just want to see the missing ones, right? So there's a few things missing, and again I can see where they are and which database it is as well. So I can go through and select the databases. So the enum all webs command can be run with quite a few parameters, so it's quite important one to have in your tool basket as well. So where are we now? True, sitemap true. What did I, sorry. Which column was it now? Is it unknown? All right. Let's just reset that again. Don't save. That's the one. So there you go. So I can now select, I can go through, because it's got all the databases there as well, I can actually manually go through and filter and so on and so forth, right? So this is kind of a bit of a trick that I use to figure out what's going on and what have you. Let's go back into our demo machine because I want to actually kick off so that's gone and done that. So what I'm going to do is actually run the pre-upgrade check command again. So that I can show you that the number of features that were referenced has now actually gone away and there'll be less errors there, right? So let that run, and then I am going to quickly continue on to the next part of it. So just to recap, so those are the commands that you want to use, right? Enum all webs and also enum solutions. So if you want to find out if any custom solutions has been deployed to your SharePoint deployment, your WSP, so custom web paths or any customized code, you can run enum solutions and find out what those are, right? But again, if you got custom solution, that means your developers will have to do some work to get those working in 2010. So once you've done an audit, after that audit, you need to now start thinking about, okay, we've done the pre-upgrade check. We know where we are at. These are the things we want to do. So the first thing the server admins need to do is obviously prepare your servers, and developers will now start to think about how do we convert our custom solutions into 2010 compatible mode, right? The easiest way to do it is, I call this disposable VMs. Basically, get all your content, run in place upgrade, export out your solutions, and then import them into Visual Studio. So if you build your solution using VisiVis or Visual Studio extensions for WSS, you can import those solutions into Visual Studio 2010, refactor them, do what you have to do, and then get them ready for deploying into 2010, right? So depends on which path you want to go to, right? And how much of customization you actually got in your deployment. right? And also you can consider just moving content, and it's the time to reorganize, do a bit of cleaning, and it could be that you started off as just a single business unit who's doing SharePoint, and then suddenly there's about quite a lot of people who's interested in it, and you want to deploy it right across the organization. And this would be a good point to kind of take stock of what you've got, start thinking further, what are we going to do? And then if you got old hardware that is not kind of performant for SharePoint, look up the performance requirements for SharePoint and then provision new hardware and everything. So if you got, like I talked about, if you got scenarios where your sites and site collections are corrupted, there are ways that you can repair them. So make sure that you can use those commands. So delete site basically means that you're going to get rid of sites that are orphaned. So that's a safe command to run, provided you got a backup. And only if you find the parameter in your, after you run your pre-upgrade check, if you find in sitemap equals false, that means you've got an orphan site collection, right? You can find out which the site collection. If you can try to export the data out, if none of that works, the best way to do is get rid of it, right? So here's the 4 things that I'm going to talk about today, right? So in-place upgrade, database attach upgrade. So in-place is pretty much as it what it sounds like. You put the CD in, go next, 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 it's done, right? No, you got to start thinking about when you do in-place as well, right? Wayne just went, what? You didn't tell that. So be careful of using in-place. In-place is really good. You can use it to your advantage, right? But I would say the majority of your upgrades are going to be a hybrid of, it's mostly going to be attached database, because that's probably, in my experience, some few of the upgrades that I've done, which is the one that's gone quite well, because it gives you a very good environment to start your deployment with, right? And then you can use a mix and match, depending on your scenario as well, right? So as it is, in-place upgrade basically means your whole environment is going to be offline while you're doing the upgrade, right? So if you only got a single SharePoint server that has no user impact on it, you can run the in-place upgrade. So the way that I use in-place upgrade is basically to figure out what actually breaks if you do an in-place upgrade, and then give that data to your developers, to your server administrators, to get them start fixing those things up, right? And that's a really good way of doing it, right? I'm going to kick off the in-place upgrade process because I need to kind of progress through. So let me go back into my demo machine. I'm just kind of preempting myself on a few things here. So it's still got these errors, so I'm going to go, well, bugger this. I can't be bothered with this stuff, so I'm going to delete the database or remove the database, right? So here's another little trick that I use. I basically, in central admin, I put a whole bunch of links that I usually use when I want to go somewhere, right? Without going into application manglement and operations and so on and so forth, I can just go, okay, I want to see all the content databases. Click, one single click, I'm there, right? So this is the one this is the offending database, as I call it, right? I'm just going to go here. I'm going to take it to offline, and then I'm going to say remove. Okay, that's fine. Go away. So I've taken that off because all I want to do is get this environment up and running. I'll worry about the data in there, right, later. So just because I want to and I can, I'm going to run the pre-upgrade checker again. So it's done the pre-upgrade checkers. I closed that run. So I'm just going to do that once, and then I'm going to run the in-place upgrade, right? So this particular VM that I've got has got SharePoint 2007 installed and SQL 2008 R2, right? So if you look at the databases here, currently, now booting up SQL 2008 R2, Management Studio. What's another good thing to do with SQL when you're deploying SharePoint? Or I kind of say it's a must-have. Yep, correct, SQL alias. It is probably one of the best things you can do, and probably going to pay long dividends. The reason being, if you were to move your SQL server or you want to change things, you can do so by doing an alias, because the config database It's bound to, if it's based on a machine name, you'll have to then build a new farm, attach the content databases. So the best way you can do it is for redundancy purposes and so on and so forth, just put in a SQL alias in. It's the easiest thing to do. So I'm referring to this one called SQL farm, which is not the machine name. I can connect to that. So if I wanted to swap out my SQL server, or if I wanted to move this, all the databases across, all I need to do is change it, and I'm away I go. So here's my very nicely constructed databases in 2007, right? I've just basically got those there, and I'm going to run the in-place upgrade on top of this and see what actually happens, yeah? So let's see if, so it's gone and done all sort of stuff. So you'd see I'm actually pretty okay now, because you see I've got a fail there. There you go, bang. I'm good to go, right? That's what you want to see, right? So now I'm going to be brave and run in-place upgrade on screen. So what I've done is I basically put in all the prerequisites for SharePoint 2010. There's quite a list of them. The good thing is the installer, if you've got an internet connection from the server you're installing, it'll go out and grab the things you want and install them. There are a few things like the WCF KB hotfix that you actually need to manually download, right? So make sure you got all your prereqs ready. So I usually put them on a trusted media source, as I call it. So in my install directory, I'll have all my installations. Actually, it's not here. Where is it? Should be somewhere. Anyway, it's somewhere. So I'm going to run the setup. So run that. It's going to fire up. So you can see that I can run the install software prerequisite, but I'm not going to bother doing that because I already got that. So I'm just going to click on install SharePoint server. So this is the 2007 box that I've got. I'm going to install SharePoint on it, right? Click, and I need to find a key. Let me go find a key. Quite handy. Don't copy this, please. Where are we? There you go. Cool. First thing it is enter the key. Continue. Accept the licensing agreement. Hey, it's going to come back and say, I've detected that you got an existing version. What do you want to do? Do you want to upgrade? Yep. That's what I want to do. Install now. Cool. This is going to take a bit of a while. So hopefully, I've timed this last night. I was just about to get it going in case I got something else here. So here is my pre-built 2007 environment, right? Oops, sorry, I have to reduce the size of that. Better? Cool. So that's the 2010 admin interface, right? Again, I've done the same thing here. I've put in some links for the things that I want to go to. Quite handy. I also kind of say to server admins, create a wiki as a subsite of there, and then start documenting your environment, right? It's a site collection. There's nothing different to it. You can actually create a wiki of central admin and then start documenting it. Make it self-documenting, right? Cool. So I'm going to go back into my slide deck. How are you doing for time? And I've got a giveaway as well. Get a chance to win a Visual Studio 2010 Ultimate with an SD and 1-year subscription, right? So got a giveaway as well. So in-place upgrade. So what happens in place? So I'm running it in the background. Basically, you install the binaries, run the config wizard. So one of the key things that happens with 2010 is the SSP is gone, right? There's no concept of an SSP. So the data that was held in the SSP search database and the profile stuff is actually going to be morphed into the taxonomy database and the user profile service, right? So when you upgrade by doing the in-place upgrade, there will be 3 databases created for the single SSP, and the SSP database that was previously kind of becomes redundant, right? So you can remove it later on. So again, in-place is a one-way street. You go that way until it's finished. You can't turn back. Or you can resume a broken in place. So again, very hard to predict. I'm kind of giving away some of the stuff that I was going to show, like your databases will be GUID-based when you do an in-place upgrade, right? So, I'm already doing that. Cool. So this is probably my favorite option, the database attached one, because it gives you a chance to get your farm ready the way you want it, right? And here's one of the things that I think is going to be really key for you to learn is how service applications are deployed for your deployment. So in SharePoint 2010, you have these services like your access services, visual services, performance point services, user profile services, and so on and so forth. So those services then get instantiated in this kind of virtual thing called service application, which has a proxy which connects to your web application. And then you can create these groupings of which service, which web application can use, right? So very flexible and a powerful model. You can also have parent farms and then consuming farms that consume services from one to the other, right? There's so many fancy ways of doing it. So start thinking about within your organization how you're going to use that, right? It's a really key architectural, logical component that you have to actually fundamentally understand how that piece works, right? So I'm talking about database attach. So basically, the easiest procedure on database attach is you create a web application with a temp database, remove the temp database, get the backup from SQL, restore it. Before you attach it, you can actually check against the web application whether that database can actually be attached, right? So there's two PowerShell commands you can use, right, which I will show you. So, there it is. So build, create, detach 2007. Even if you got a 2005 SQL database in 32-bit mode, this is a way that you can actually fast track it, back it up, restore it to SQL 2008, and you'll be ready to go, right? Moving content is pretty straightforward. It's the things that you have to do after that becomes a bit tricky. So test and repeat. So that's kind of what happens. Let's go and see what happens with the database attach upgrade. So here's my 2010 environment, and I'll open up SQL, and there you go. Nicely named databases and everything. You can use PowerShell to configure all of these things. However, there's one service application that still has to have a GUID. Can you tell me which one it is? I'm going to give you a prize if you tell me which one it is. No, search there. That's yours. There you go, sir. Performance point services. Yeah. They forgot the switch. It will be fixed. Yeah, create it, restore it, and then attach it again. Yep, that's right. You can get, so if you provision performance point services using the GUI, it'll get a GUID. The way around is detach it again, rename it, attach it back again, connect it via PowerShell, right? PowerShell is king. Cool. So, what was I going to do? Oh yeah, I was going to attach a database. Cool. There you go. So I've got PowerShell. I'm just going to reduce the size of this window because I thought I was going to get a bit more real estate on the screen. So let's put this down to about 80 and 200. Okay, oh, that's all right. Cool. So, like anything pre-canned, so I'm going to do this command called test sp content db. So what I did, just so that you know the context around this, is that I backed up a database called, so in my 2007 environment, hey, look, it's still going. Where's my data files? Data temp. So this database is just a straight off backup of the one of the databases that was in the web application. So what I've done is I've backed it up, I brought it across to my 2010 environment, and then I'm going to attach it, right? But before I attach it, I need to check, is it going to be compatible with my 2010 environment, right? So what I've done is so I'll go into SP01, and in here, that's the database that I've restored, right? With content and everything. And now I'm going to run the command, this command here, which is, I'll just copy that, which is test SP content database and the name of the database and the web application that it's going to be attached to, right? I'm not attaching it now, still. It's nothing, it's just in SQL. SharePoint has no idea about it. So I actually need to verify that you cannot. So if I go to manage content databases, so this projects.trendsbydev.com has only SP10 content projects02, right? Which actually happens to be that site that refused to give us a clean thing. So I've actually been able to upgrade that as well, right? So this is the larger one. What I've done is I've taken a chunk of it separately to do a small upgrade, right? So I'm going to run the command. Hey, there's only one thing missing. Something to do with Access services. And I know that this particular database, there's nothing to do with Access services, right? So when you run that command, you basically get this message saying, so category missing setup file, it's an error, obviously it's true. Is it upgrade blocking? So the key thing to look there is upgrade blocking. If that is set to true, don't try to force it, right? It won't happen, right? So if upgrade blocking is false, you might get a whole lot of stuff, but that upgrade blocking, if it's false, you can still mount this content database and then get it going, right? So the second one I'm going to do is actually going to connect this up to the web application, right? So the command to use to run the upgrade is not upgrade, but mount. There is a command called upgrade that's used if there is an error and you have to actually resume a upgrade, right? So there is a commandlet called upgrade SP content database, which you will use. So for example, if I run this and I had a failure, if I want to resume it, I can use the upgrade content DB, right? Oh, okay. Yep, I will assign a new database ID. This is late night testing. Assign new database ID. Hey. What did I miss? Oh, sorry. Wrong one. That's the one I want to mount. I thought I changed it last night. There you go. Cool. So, how far has this gone? Hey, cool. So I'm going to run the config wizard. So bear in mind, you can actually stop it at this point, right? So if you're going to go for a hybrid approach, which means I'm just going to install the binaries, but I'm not going to run the configuration wizard. I'm going to create the service applications and the associated things that I need, and then connect them up manually. You can do it at this point, right? But I'm just going to run this over and go, yep. This is now going to open. So what in the background, what it does is, yeah, it's gone and done it. Now it's going to open up central admin, right? Share V40 in central admin, and then it's going to provision a timer job to go and do the upgrade, right? So let me go back to the slide deck. I think I'm going to run out of time. So again, database attached, what you get is a chance to reorganize, remove one on the side, and you can actually gradually roll things out, right? And the key thing here, service applications. That's the command, just in case I had, okay. Hybrid approach, read-only databases. So here's another key thing you can do, right? You can go in SQL, into SQL Server, and go to SQL Server settings, and set the database read-only setting to false, true, and then run the upgrade, because that way your databases won't be upgraded, right? So all you're doing is running the configuration, and all these databases are going to be ignored. So SharePoint, the installer is aware that this has been set to false, true. So false, true. So that's another way of you can run your upgrade, right? So another one is, so if you got a really well set up SharePoint environment, what you can do is basically detach all the content databases, run the upgrade, and then start attaching them. So there's different ways of looking at it, right? So excuse me. So developers, how many developers in the audience? I'm kind of acutely aware that I've kind of left them out of this equation. But this is good to know, because you can, even in your environments, what you can do is you can get production content of your sites and site collections if you go deploy solutions and start doing this, right? This is useful, right? Yeah? Maybe? No? As a developer, there's a whole lot of stuff around SharePoint 2010 solutions you need to learn as well. The good thing is all the Ignite content and the SDKs and everything is actually available on the MSD and developer portal. So there's like a 5-day upgrade class for developers and a 5-day upgrade class for IT pros. So you can download those things. I'll actually put the links out where you can get them as well, right? There's some really cool labs, videos, hands-on labs, and so on and so forth that you can use, right? So this is pretty much what you're going to do. So admins, again, this is something you need to plan out. So for example, you are doing a upgrade, say, you got, say, 300, 400 gigs of data in your SharePoint deployment, and then you want to do an upgrade. You want to phase it out. So if you start planning out your deployment, say, by Friday, 6 o'clock, we're going to start our upgrade process, and by Sunday, 6 o'clock, we should be finished. If you're not finished, we need to now invoke fall back into 2007, and then try it again, right? So you can start planning out these things of how you phase it out so that end users are not affected, right? So you can use different methods of kind of planning out and doing it, right? Again, some of the things that you might encounter is third-party products that you have integrated into SharePoint deployment, right? Just be careful that third-party products are good, but there are ones that abuse SharePoint. Basically means that if it's gone and done something to the config database, you won't be able to upgrade in place. You'll have to do something like a content database attach, something like that, right? So be careful of that as well. So so if you're in 32-bit, so I actually talked about this last year at TechEd, how to take a 32-bit farm into 64-bit. So my advice is start in the SQL layer, because that's where you're going to get the most benefit out of, right? So do it a phase approach, tiered phase approach. First do the SQL layer, because that's the easiest one to do, because it's just with databases. Easy depends on how you set SQL up. So the first thing I tell when I go talk with DBAs and so forth is make sure there's alias set up. They understand what the data growth requirements are. So for example, another key thing that Troy mentioned is around setting the data growth limit of data growth in SQL, right? Do you know the default setting is 1 meg, but you don't want it to leave it at that. You want to be at least above 20 to 100, right? Because when you upload a document to SharePoint, SQL is just going to go, so it's going to slow things down, right? So make sure that you understand those things as well. So second stage, the application layer, and then finally the front end, right? So there's a really good article on TechNet on how to do this. All the steps are there as well. And I've actually got a separate blog post series specifically talking about how to go from 32 to 64. So that's the resource center. I'm just going to quickly go into my demo and see what's going on. Hey, it's done it. So now if I come in here, That's my database. So you can see it's kind of assume the defaults. You can go and change that, obviously. I want to say I'm going to go on. You can only have one. And so here's another thing you can do. Is actually when you got multiple servers in 2010, you can specify the timer jobs where these are running, right? So this is really cool. So you can, if you got multiple servers, you can say, I want this server to run the timer job associated with this content database. Right, so now I've upgraded that. So let's see what that looks like. So before we do that, let's go to application management, site collections, view all site collections. That's the one I wanted. So that's the site collection. Remember, I attached a second content database, but it didn't have a root site collection. It actually had a separate site collection, right? And that one's called site/docs. And I believe I need to go and now set these. So if I go to application management again, I need to actually set the site collection administration, because that account doesn't have any rights on that one on this machine. So anyway, what I'm going to show you is, so when you upgrade, another key thing around upgrade is there's a feature called visual upgrade. Right? See, this site is actually in 2010 mode, but there's nothing different, right? You don't see the ribbon or anything, right? Because by default, when you do a content database attach upgrade, it retains the old UI settings. So this is really cool, because if you've done a whole lot of training for your end users around how to use SharePoint, and they're not really cool, not wanting to use the ribbon, you can still use this, or let site collection admins use the preview. So how you do that is you can go in here, go to site collections, or you can actually click on visual upgrade, and choose to preview the site in the 2010 mode, right? So again, this is not true if you're doing a public-facing WCM site, because obviously that's going to be a custom master page attached to it and so on and so forth. But for the internal collaboration, document management, and so on and so forth, this is quite handy, right? Apologies, it's just taking a bit slow. We are going to break into tea, aren't we? Mind if I take another 5 minutes? Is that all right? Just to show you, is that all right? Cool. Go. Let's go and see what's happening on the other one. Ooh. The wizard will upgrade. Go ahead, wizard. Okay. We probably won't have any time to do this, okay? But at least you guys understand what's actually happening in the background, yeah? So my advice is get hold of a VM, get a subset of your data if you can, start building this stuff, start learning. So I kind of use PowerShell for everything, like to build up the service apps and so on and so forth. Search is a big thing as well. So what's new in search? Who knows what's new in search? What's the key improvement in search? There you go. Cool. So you can have index redundancy now, yeah? Pretty cool. Hey, here's another new thing, right? Fastpress. So this is a key one as well, because this kind of is the connecting password that you need to use to when you want to add other servers and so forth. This is a key thing as well. So as usual, it's the usual Microsoft password1. Cool. Next. I can't type. Trust Notepad. It should be in here somewhere. There you go. Password1. Paste. Next. Here's where you choose. Okay, do you want to change the existing one, or you want to preserve? I'm going to say, I'm a conservative person. I'm going to preserve the old look and feel. And next, goes away, does some stuff. And here's the key thing, right? When you're doing this upgrade, if you're doing it in place, or if you're doing a hybrid method, first start with the server where you have got central admin installed, right? Start on the central admin server. First do it there. Install it on your front end, and then run the config wizard. You have to run the config wizard on each of the front ends that you are installing SharePoint on, right? Key point. Okay. And if I go back into my 2010 box, there you go. So I can say, yep, I want to preview the updated user interface and go OK. If I click update, it's going to go across and update it across for everything, right? think we must be out of time. Yeah, cool. So there you go. Hey, visual upgrade. Everything's working. So that's SharePoint. So basically you can see that you can hide that little bar and say, you can modify so as a site collection administrator, I can enable this and let users preview it. I can preview it and go, yep, we are good with the new UI, we can go with it, right? Cool. So back to the slide deck. There's actually one slide from current. So here's the one place you have to go to, tinyurl.com SP2010 upgrade. It's on TechNet, the TechNet upgrade place. You can even download, like I said, a eval VM to test these things out. And I've got my blog there with the blog post series around the 32-bit to 64-bit migration. And announcement, we are doing a SharePoint day. This is a company thing. It's in Wellington on the 29th of September at the Intercon. If you are interested in attending, send an email. And it's two streams, business and technical. It's just a free day where you can come and learn about SharePoint, right? If you are from Wellington, you're most welcome to come along. Spaces are limited, so hence the email address there, and kind of we'll figure out who's going to be coming and what have you. No cost. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.